This is Austin Real Estate Investing. Austin Real Estate Investing. We'll be discussing real estate investing in Austin, Texas, and bringing you experts from all different sectors of the real estate game. Your host, Jordan Moorhead, is a real estate agent and investor in Austin and is here to help you get started or to build your portfolio and explore new strategies.
This is Jordan Moorhead. This is Austin Real Estate Investing. Today I have Joe Scaparra here, and he's going to tell you all about his experience investing in Austin, Texas. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Good, Jordan. How you doing?
Doing great. So, Joe, real quick, who are you and how are you involved with real estate investing in Austin here?
Well, I came to Austin in 1998. I retired from the Air Force at age 42 and got into financial services, worked with Wells Fargo's for 2 years as a financial advisor and did real well and started my own practice. Was an independent financial advisor for 18 years. And during that process, I was advising people specializing in retirement planning, helping people, manage their 401ks or IRAs. And that was the way for financial success on where I was oriented. But during the process, I had a kid graduate and go to Texas A&M. And so I bought my first property really just to save money on dorm fees, not really looking at it as an investment for retirement. But after 2 years, that investment was doing surprisingly well, and it changed my focus. And then I decided at that point, since I lived here in Austin, to focus on buying small multifamily duplexes here in the Austin Metroplex. Mm-hmm. So that's how I got started. I really started buying in 2005 here in Austin. My first property was 2003 in Bryan, College Station. But since then, I have kind of moved my focus here to the Austin Metroplex. And that's how I got started. And as I started building more properties, I started realizing that this was a great way to invest for retirement. So that's how I got started.
So you said your first property was right by Texas A&M, and then you've been all in Austin since that. What's the most common investment for you here in Austin? What type of property do you like to invest in here?
Well, I limit myself to multifamily and small multifamily. So duplexes, they're easy to manage. They cash flow. For me, I'm a cash flow guy. I invest for cash flow. Really didn't give much attention to appreciation. At the time I was investing back in 2005, duplexes were not desired. So they were on the market forever and ever and ever, and no one wanted to buy them. So really, you had the pick of the litter, and they were a lot more run down, although you see still run down. But before then, you could invest in investment property with as little as 3 to 5% down a pure investor. It wasn't until 2008 that they changed the requirements to 20% down. Mm-hmm. So I really I stick with multifamily. I do have one fourplex back in Bryan. I bought a few more properties in Bryan through the years just because, good deals came up over there. But my main focus is here in Austin, Round Rock, Georgetown, Taylor, and Austin itself.
Awesome. So, you mostly do duplexes here in Austin. You said you started investing in Austin because you live here. Didn't really think about the appreciation. Clearly that's changed now. So the appreciation's been outrageous. Duplexes are the hottest thing on the block anymore. Could you tell us about any deals that you've seen not be great here in Austin? So you've done quite a few. Is there any advice you have for people or anything they can try to avoid with buying a duplex here in Austin?
Well, I think I used to say this all the time. I used to say every single duplex that I've looked at up until now, the ones that I didn't buy, I should have bought. I can't think of a duplex now that had I bought it, it would have been a bad investment. So but that the world is changing. I used to be the guy that said, I'm a cash flow guy. I don't know why you'd invest for appreciation. And I'm still a cash flow guy, but it's getting harder and harder to be just a strict cash flow guy in this market because the prices I've never dreamed would have jumped up as much as they have, as fast as they have. And so now I'm looking at it as if you want to be a realistic, pure investor here in Austin, and you're going to stay in Austin, then capital appreciation has to be part of your strategy because it's going to be hard to cash flow positive day one as a pure investor. I think this market is really still very good for house hacking, owner occupied duplexes. In fact, I think that's where the play is right now. Occasionally, you'll come across a product. As a pure investor, you can buy and still cash flow a little bit positive. But my idea of breaking even is not investing for myself. I'm more of a cash flow. But I'm starting to look at maybe I need to start thinking a little bit of appreciation as part of my strategy, because if I stay with just strictly cash flow as a pure investor, it's going to be hard to buy property in Austin if you're not willing to take a little bit more risk and either be breaking even or maybe slightly negative to bet on the appreciation. But that's something I'm not used to doing, so it's out of my box a little bit. So I'd rather look other way. I would rather keep looking on the outskirts to try to find cash flow if I can.
Sure. And you mentioned house hacking, so obviously, I'm a big fan of house hacking. I'm actually house hacking the duplex I'm in here right now in East Austin. Been house hacking since 2016, but I think everybody that's able should get into house hacking. I have all my own ideas. I'd like to hear a little bit more about why you think house hacking is a great idea.
Well, I'm on Bigger Pockets, and I answer a lot of questions. And through the last couple of years, I've met 5 or 6 young people that were wanting to get into real estate, and their initial idea is to buy a house. Mm-hmm. And so as I start mentoring these kids, I realize that if they buy a duplex and rent out one side, they can cut their expenses from where they're renting dramatically. And if they're not married, or they're a young couple, or just a young professional that is already rooming with someone in an apartment complex, by buying a duplex, renting out one side and then renting out one room on your side, you're almost living for nothing, or maybe just a couple hundred out of pocket. So that's it seems to me that's an easy discussion, and it's actually a great way to jump into the real estate market, because what you'll realize that once you start building a portfolio, it's not all about just investing and buying deals. It's now managing a business. Managing landlording is as much as important attention to what you do as finding the deals, if you're a buy and hold investor like I am. So house hacking does a lot of things for you. It gets you entered the market with like 1 foot in and 1 foot out, because you're getting some utility use out of it yourself, personal use. And it's easier to manage because your tenant is right next door. So you can see how he's living, and if he's not making the payments, all you have to do is walk next door when he drives up, so you know he's home. So it's not like they won't answer your phone calls when they're behind on rent. He's right there. So it's easier to get broken in, and it's a great way to start. And I was looking at some numbers, Jordan, and I was looking at the market today, because it's hard to find duplexes under $350,000.
Oh yeah,
in Austin.
Oh, yeah.
But believe it or not, if you look today, there's one on the market today for $300,000. Mm-hmm. Just went on the market today. It's not your typical duplex. It's out there by Decker Lane and in East Austin, but it looks like a very nice property from the net. It looks like it was a mobile home that's kind of more permanently built up, mm-hmm. and it looks like everything was been remodeled. And they're asking $300,000 for it, so it's probably going to go a little bit more than that. But I ran some numbers. Listen to these numbers. If you're out there and you're renting, and you're trying to figure out how I'd love to get in this market because everything's going up, but I don't know how, and it seems like everything's out of my cost. Well, I just ran some numbers before we started, and I took 350,000. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be easy to find, but if you keep looking, I think you can find something for 350,000.
Oh, yeah.
So if you take a $350,000 property, I would rather think of it as a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
And you put 5% down, so you have to have a little bit of a down payment. That's $17,500. And if you don't have that, then I'd say start saving. A little down payment's what you're going to need. And you can get in with a little bit cheaper than that. That's 5% down, maybe even 3%. Yeah. And if you're an ex-military vet, you can get in with 0 down on a VA loan. So there's some options there. You mortgage $332,000 at 3% because you're going to get owner-occupied rates. Mm-hmm. Your taxes at $7,500 roughly. Your insurance at $1,500. Your payment on that is $2,152. $2,152. Now you're saying, well, Joe, I'm only renting for $1,400. I can't afford $2,152 on an ongoing basis. Well, you forget that one side is another house, and you're going to rent that out for $1,200, and that brings your out of pocket to $952. Now, if you're renting for $1,200 or $1,400, that's negative cash flow, because at the end of the month, you have nothing to show for it. You've lived there, but you got no equity in the house. You got no stake in the appreciation of that property, and you can't, charge. The only thing that's going to happen is your rent's going to go up where you're living more than likely. So that's a negative thing. So you got $952.
Kick you out whenever they want to. They can boot you out.
That's right, and you don't have any control. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
If you end up renting one of your rooms out, if you're a single guy or already rooming with someone, and you charge them just $500 a month to live in your side of the duplex with you, now you're out. It's costing you $452 a month to live. Now, if you think about that, we'll just use some round numbers: $400, $500 a month to live, $1,400 rent. You're saving $900 a month just by buying. And in 2 years, that's about $20,000 that you've saved up just by not making that expenses, not saving additional money from what you're doing. And now you're in a position to either buy another duplex or maybe go out and buy that single family home if that's really what you want. But what you'll find is once you start this model, you'll probably continue buying another one until you get married and have a couple children. Then you're going to want to maybe move out of the duplex arena and into a house. But you want to be building what I tell people: predictable, sustainable cash flow. The day you get your first job, whether it be out of college or out of high school, and you're going to learn a vocation, I tell people, because I specialize in retirement planning, that you're in a race for retirement and you're losing day one. There's no more companies out there that pay you pensions other than the government. You go in the military or go become a school teacher. But other than those, you got to continue to work, and you got to build up a big enough asset that when you retire and you don't work, you can draw down enough. And that's a risky business. For a financial advisor, the biggest risk I had, people would come in with a 401k and we'd start investing it. And they would say, how much do I need to put in this 401k? And I would look at them, Jordan, I'd say, well, how long are you going to live? And I go, well, I don't know. I said, well, I don't know either. So put down as much as you can, because our goal is when you retire, we're going to have a whole nest egg and we're going to start drawing it down. And we're hoping that you die before it goes to zero.
Mm-hmm.
But with real estate, investment real estate, you can live till you're 1 million years old. That cash flow is not going to stop. And the moment you get that thing paid off, now your cash flow is really protected.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you see a downturn, you're in a position where you can weather the storm because you're not even making a mortgage payment. You're just paying taxes and insurance. And typically, my strategy has been buy a duplex, take the profits. Because I had a steady job and I didn't need those profits to buy more property, I was using those profits to pay down the mortgage. And I was getting my duplexes were getting paid off between 8 and 14 years of renting them out. I wasn't living on any of their income, so I didn't have that stress because I had a really good job.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of you out there that have a good job and that you can afford to do that. Others that if you're just barely getting by, then that's okay. You can house hack, and once you get your feet underneath you, you can get some additional funds, maybe start buying some more. But at least get in the market, because this housing market has gone crazy. And I tell people, if you could find a way to own and break even or just out of pocket a few $100s versus 12 or 1400, get in the market, because the market is tough right now, and it's going to get tougher. It's not going to get.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it here in East Austin, even on my little street. You've seen my house. On my street, these houses, they started going around $260 for a 3-bed, 2-bath, and that was this year. They were selling for $260. I've seen them sell for as high as, get this, $500,000 for a fully remodeled 3-bed, 2-bath. So duplexes, maybe not as crazy, but they're still going up. They're going up a lot. So
they tell me that when I bought my duplexes, when I started buying in 2005, people were questioning them, because most people think the way you make money in real estate is you buy low and you sell high. And that was never my concept. My concept was get in the market, cash flow above your expenses, and pay down the asset. And now you have what I call an oil well.
Yeah.
If you had an oil well, you wouldn't know it. The only way you'd know you'd have an oil well if you inherited it from your grandfather, had some land, you had some mineral rights, and you inherited some oil, some royalties to oil. The only way you know it is that check in the mail. That they would send you a royalty check based on how much oil or gas they pulled out of the ground that day, that month or that quarter, and they'd send you a check. But you can make your own oil wells by buying real estate. Real estate and duplexes, you get 2 oil wells for every one you buy, and those are monthly checks come in the mail every month. So you're right. I mean, the where you're at, I know your location real well, because I own 2 duplexes right around the corner from you. I bought them in 2012 and 13, and actually when I bought them, the neighborhood was not really that good, and they were very, very cheap. And my philosophy was just fix them up, make them better than the neighborhood. And the other fear that people have in real estate when they don't have any real estate is they fear that they'll have some property and they can't rent it.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the biggest fears. Well, what if I get this property and I got to make a mortgage payment? Well, the beauty about that in Austin and in Texas in general is that there is a shortage of I would call low-income housing, and I don't mean government housing or project housing. I mean, I call, if you're renting 12 to 1,300 or below, that's low-income housing. Oh, and if you put an ad out there, you're going to get inundated, and you're going to have to turn those ads off in 3 to 4 days, because you're going to have no problem finding renters at that level. Mm-hmm. And that makes this investing so desirable, because if you can just manage your property and keep it going, you're going to find the renters are there to rent it.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that. So if you're renting your duplex unit for $1,300, and you think, this rent's kind of high, there's a new apartment down the street that's renting a similar size unit for $1,500 or $1,600. So your duplex unit still looks really attractive. It may be higher rents than it was last year. And I don't know if we've touched on that. Is rents go up a lot. I'm sure you've seen your rents at these duplexes in East Austin double in the last 10 years or so. And
well, I bought mine in 2012, right around the corner from you. And the rents were $550 and $600.
Yeah.
And I'm at $1,325, $1,300 right now. And I think I'm about $100 below market now, because I'm one of these guys that I'm more conservative. I'd rather have it rented than empty. Mm-hmm. So when I get a tenant in there that I like, I generally don't raise their rents for 2 years, and that puts me way behind the rental market. Oh, yeah. And then I very seldom have them leave, but when they do leave, they're leaving the state or leaving the city. And when I leave, at that point, I try to get it up close to market rents, but I still maybe $50 or because a house made of gold empty is worthless to a cash flow investor. So I think the key is keeping it real, occupied. And right now in Austin, I would hate to be a renter in Austin today, because every time your lease comes due, you're nervous as to what the landlord's going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you own the duplex, you can your payment stays static. It might go up a little bit with property taxes, but your portion in your unit isn't going to go up too much. Where your other unit, you can raise the rent on them. Like you were talking about, if you have a roommate, you can raise the rent on them. Everybody else is getting their rent raised except you. So,
I mean, that's exactly right. And the other fear to owning real estate, as people may have heard, is I know somebody that lost their house, they got foreclosed. I know someone that bought it and then they had to move and the market was down and they had to sell. And I tell people who buy duplexes now, you got to be smart now, because some of these duplexes, as you said, they're selling for $450, $500, and they're not even close to cash flowing. You might get hurt there if we get a downturn. But what I'm going to tell you is that if you're renting 1,200 below and you get a downturn, like we had a downturn in 2008 in real estate. Remember, I told you I started buying in 2005. Okay, I have never lowered rents, because in the rental market, in the stratus I'm in the lower income, when you have a recession, it's usually the higher end folks that get hurt the worst. And when they're dropping down, they can't afford their $2,000 a month mortgage or their $1,800 rent payment. So they migrate lower. And at some point at the low end at $1,000, $1,200, it's stabilized even in a downturn. And the rental pool actually goes up for that group of folks. And so your rents are pretty stable. Now, with some of these rents now, 750 square feet, which is some of these duplexes, I own a couple of them, and the rents are 1,300. If I start getting to 14, 15, 1,600 on rents, and then we see a downturn, I think those rents might drop a little bit. But they're probably protected down to about 1,200. I think you're pretty protected there. It would take a very deep, long recession to worry about those. And again, if you're going to worry about those, there's no other investment I can think of that can survive better than multifamily, lower income multifamily.
Absolutely. Completely agree. So I think, when you're properly set up, real estate is a pretty great place to be. I know a lot of people, same as you, that have held properties through the 2008 crash when everybody was losing their property. So, as long as you're cash flowing, there's no reason to sell.
Hey guys, this is Jordan Moorhead here, and I wanted to ask if you could do a huge favor for me. If you could go leave a review for this podcast wherever you're listening to it, that would really help me get this into the hands of other people that are interested in information about Austin real estate investing, and I'd be able to help more people. Thanks, guys.
I tell people a duplex will not cause you to lose your property. Your personal life, if you fall down. I mean, the worst thing will happen is if you lose your job and you're living on one side of your duplex and you can't even afford the $400 or $500 that you're paying out of pocket. All you have to do is get up and move, put the for rent sign on your side, don't sell it. And now you're $400, $500 or $600 positive, and you can go about your business. If it was a single family home though, and you bought instead of the duplex and you couldn't make the payments, you're going to have to sell the house, and you're going to have to hope that the market's up, because you're not getting any other cash flow from your house. And if you're out of a job and you have no cash flow to pay for it, you're going to have to sell it on a fire sale. And if it needs work and the market's down, that's where people get underwater, and they owe more than they can sell it for, and that's why they get foreclosed. But a duplex, because it's going to be drawn in income and it's on the lower sector, you're pretty well protected. The worst case you have to do is move out and move in with mom and dad and rent out the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a pretty easy, very low risk way to get into real estate investing, or just to buy real estate. You talked about this and you hit the nail on the head here. You actually have a much higher risk by buying a house to live in than you do by buying a duplex to live in. So,
right, exactly.
I think it's a great idea. I've been doing it for 4 years now. We'll continue to do it for a few more years here, and recommend to everybody that's able to house hack, look at house hacking, at least think about it. It's a great idea. So, Joe, could you tell us something that you tell newer investors to look for, or an experience you've had that you tell newer investors to try and avoid? Is there something that's gone wrong for you that you tell people, hey, watch out for this?
Well, Here's the thing. If you're in real estate and you're buying and you start getting a portfolio, you're gonna have a few bad experiences. Hopefully, those experiences will come at least after you've experienced a couple really good years. And for me, I had 3 years of I just was living in heaven. I just couldn't believe how well this was working. And then I had a unit in Round Rock, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and I had a couple in there, no kids. And there was some domestic violence going on I wasn't aware of, and he ended up kicking his girlfriend out. And I'd say 6 months later, he was paying rent on time, but 6 months later he didn't pay rent. I called him up 2 weeks in, and he just told me, I don't need the place. It was bigger than I needed. I left the keys on the counter. I'm out.
Oh, wow.
And that was my first bad experience. So I get over there and I open up the place. The electricity's off. The food in the refrigerator had been spoiled for two weeks, and it was nasty. And there was a big old hole in the wall in the living room, and the toilet was in the first toilet I got to in the bathroom in the center way was bashed in. So a lot of anger issues, and it was just a mess. And as I walked into this thing, the first emotion that hit me was I was angry. How could he do this to my property? And then the second emotion that hit me was, this is why you want to get out of real estate, Joe. The shoe finally dropped, and this is why you don't want to invest in real estate. And then about 3 minutes into this thing, I put my financial cap on, thinking as an advisor back, logically again. And I realized that even though it was messed up and it looked kind of messed up, it was all cosmetic. I could fix the hole in the wall. I had a handyman for $30 there. Mm-hmm. I can get a make-ready team. Normally you'd pay him about $150 to get this ready, but now I'll pay him $250 because it's going to be a lot more work. Mm-hmm. I can replace the toilet for $100, have someone install it for $75. And I also got to keep his deposit. So as it turns out, it was a great learning experience. And I'm glad I went through it, actually, because it makes you stronger once you get on the other end. Mm-hmm. If I didn't have the 3 years of where I saw the potential of real estate, I might have been one of those guys that said, I tried real estate, had a bad experience, I'll never do it again. Luckily for me, I was able to, I knew the potential of real estate at that point, and luckily I was strong enough to get through it. You will have some bad experiences, but let me tell you, if you're just starting out, the best thing you can do is start networking with other investors that are doing the same thing you're doing or you're trying to do, because they've seen it, they've helped you. It used to be that I come across a problem in a duplex. I don't know what's causing it. Why is this breaking or whatnot? Now I've done so many of them. It's very seldom I come across something that I have to think about what it takes to fix it. And if you're working with, if you get a group of other investors, and if you don't know of an electrician you need, call your friend up and say, listen, I got this problem. You know anybody that can help him with it? And, investors like to help other investors. So get to, you're not reinventing a wheel.
Yeah.
But it's scary out there when you first start. I guarantee, I tell people the first one you buy is the hardest decision you'll ever make, is buying your first investment property. And I'm talking your first pure one. Even the one you house hack is a little bit scary, but you're still getting some utility out of it. And it's like I said, halfway in, halfway out. Mm-hmm. But when you buy that first duplex or first property that you're not going to move into it, you're going to rent it out. It's a little bit more scary initially, but man, you can get through that and you're home free. You'll be looking for your next one in short order.
Absolutely. I think that, you mentioned this. If you're not prepared to deal with problems, you're going to get surprised sometime when you're investing in real estate, because stuff happens. I've had nothing that couldn't be overcome happen, but I've had quite a few issues happen with the units that I own. And, over time, I've had periods of time where I said, hey, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I'm going to sell these buildings. This is terrible. But once I've gotten through it to the other side, I said, things are going great. I'm glad I held on. I had a bad domestic violence issue once myself, and It was not fun. It was in the newspapers, believe it or not. And it had nothing to do with the property, but jealous boyfriend made things difficult for both me and the other tenant. But yeah, like you said, be prepared, talk to other investors. People want to help you and you'll be okay. So, Joe, I know we've talked a lot about newer investors or newer house hackers here. Beyond, be prepared and talk to other investors. What's a piece of advice you'd like to give to a newer investor who's thinking about, let's say, house hacking in Austin?
Well, what I would say is you've got to think about your rice, okay? You got to have, do your planning. RICE, RICE. R is for reserves, okay? You got to have reserves down. You have to be in good financial standing yourself. If you're a person living paycheck to paycheck and you have a hard time saving a dollar, investing might not be the way. You need to get frugal. You need to get motivated, and you need to get oriented, and you have to build up some reserves. So you're going to need a down payment. You're going to need a little extra money for a little bit of reserves. To fix them. You don't need a whole lot, but you need to have. If you have credit card debt out there, that's the worst debt you got. You got to get rid of it. So, build up your reserves. Okay. I stands for income on RICE. You got to have a job, or if you're self-employed, you got to have a job for 2 years for for things. So if you're looking at wanting to buy, build up some reserves for that down payment. Make sure you have a steady job, and then C is credit. And in order to get a loan, you're going to have to have a credit score, and the better score you have, the better rates you'll get, and the more you qualify for. So get your credit going, and then E is for equity, and equity is usually your down payment. Mm-hmm. And if you can find a property that is, it's hard to do on your first purchase, because the first one I had to do, it had to be picture perfect. I didn't want to have to fix anything. But sometimes these more of a rundown property, if it's cosmetic, it's the money you put into fixing it up increases the value 3, 4, 5-fold, and builds your equity quicker. So you want to have some equity in there. So I would say get your house in financial order. And number 2, because you're brand new, you're going to need some guidance. So typically you're going to find a realtor out there that's going to help you because they're experts, but they're not all the same. Okay. Find you a real estate agent that understands investment real estate, understands investment terminology. And if you can find someone that's, house hacking or has multiple investment properties and it has the experience that can guide you and walk you through, because some of your best purchases are going to be properties that are a little bit run down. And if you're with an experienced real estate agent, he or she can point out that this is cosmetic, and I've got a handyman that can help fix this. It's not going to be that expensive. You can actually move into this side and fix it up at your leisure. You don't have to have all the money right up front, and you can be renting the other side out and still saving money. So there's a lot of options, but if you can get with an experienced professional, especially when you're brand new, as you get older, you might feel like you don't need that, but your early purchases, you definitely are going to want some guidance on that. And it's hard to find real estate agents that are investors. It really is. And most of them, a lot of them don't even own a house, and most of them do. It's their primary residence, and they've never even thought about, investing in other real estate. So find that. You need someone to be right there by your side, because it is a big step, and it needs a lot. You're going to need some encouragement through it.
Absolutely. And, you made a good point. And I'd say if you are a realtor, look into real estate investing, get into real estate investing. You're going to need to build a retirement income, because as a realtor, you don't have some sort of pension or anything that's going to take care of you in retirement. So for the realtors out there listening, stop thinking about investment property and get into house hacking or get into real estate investing. You have some advantages. You need to invest in real estate, or nobody's going to take care of you when you retire. So Joe, I get lots of questions from people looking to invest in Austin or house hack in Austin. What's your best advice for people looking, in what areas of Austin would you recommend people house hack in?
Well, that's a good question about what area, because, having been here since 1998, I will tell you, there were some bad areas in Austin to what you should be, even the first two that I bought right around the corner from you 10 years ago, that was not a very good area, and I got them really cheap, but it was not a very good area. But I will tell you, based on what I've seen in Austin and how it's changed so much, I would say that there's no bad areas in Austin. There are some that are better than others, but what's happening almost, and as far as I can tell, in every neighborhood, it's improving. It's not getting worse. And part of the reason why it's improving is because the cost to live there has increased. And people that don't have jobs cannot stay in there anymore. So some of these bad neighborhoods 10, 15 years ago, some drug dealing going on, some really, ratty people living there. It was dirt cheap to live there, and so a lot of shady business going on. But today, that's pretty much disappearing. There might be little pockets here, but investors are finding those properties that are the cheapest because those are really bad neighborhoods that run down. They're buying those properties and either leveling them or completely rehabbing them. And once they do that, they've got to increase the rents to get the cash flow. And that's driving, the bad people out. And so there's no bad properties. I'm going to tell you something. If I was a realtor in this town, because this is something I didn't really realize until about the last 2 years, just because it didn't make logical sense. But believe it or not, most of these high-techers coming from San Francisco that are relocating to Austin, a lot of them are in the mindset of renting because they had to rent in Palo Alto, they had to rent in San Francisco, and I got a washer and dryer from a gentleman. I was putting up. I needed a washer dryer to put into a unit in Bryant because it's student housing and they typically need washer and dryers. So I find it off Craigslist, and it's up in the domain. I'm going to this condominium area to pick up, and I go into this place. It's a very nice place, but it's small. It's less than 1,000 square feet. And I made a good deal with this gentleman. He was computer scientist, and he's going back to San Francisco. He'd been in Austin for over 5 years. And I thought he owned the place. So I'm asking him about real estate because I'm always doing that. And I find out he's renting. And I looked at him astonishingly because he was a high income earner. And I said, you're renting? You don't own this place? And he realized that he had made a mistake. But he's going back to San Francisco and he's planning on renting there too because it's just too expensive. But I would tell you, if I was a real estate agent today, I would go to the higher end rental apartment complexes or whatever I could find high end renters, and I would have a laminated sheet just like I brought here with you today, $350,000 square foot. I mean $350,000 duplex. These guys have the down payment money. They were just programmed to rent from the get go, and they never even crossed their mind about buying a property. And I would show them how they can benefit from this. And, I know it's a struggle out there to find a client, but as a real estate agent, if you can go to the people that are not even thinking about buying and convert them to a buyer, then there's unlimited amount of people out there, and they're willing to listen to your story because it's an exciting story. And it's one that they look at you and they go, here's a guy that's helping me, or improve my situation. And they won't see you as a salesman so much as they'll see you as a problem solver and helping them, because we all have the problem that someday we want to get to a place in our life that we don't want to work. We don't have to work. Most of us, hope to live a long life, and most of us want to retire. And if we don't want to retire, we want to have the choice to take that low-paying job because I like to do it versus I have to take this high-paying job because I got to have the money on the table. And real estate will do that for you.
Yeah, and I think you make a lot of good points towards house hacking there too. So, you may not think you're in position to house hack, but in reality, for a duplex, you need as little as 3.5% down. And I have lots of lenders I could refer you to for that. But even buying a single family to house hack, you can do between 3 and 5% down. A lot of people have that money or have access to that money and just don't know it. There's lots of ways that you're buying a home to live in, duplex included. I know my first duplex that I bought, I didn't have enough money for the down payment in my savings account, but I had a retirement account. And I was able to liquidate some of this money from this retirement account and use it for a down payment for my duplex. And yeah, that duplex, that money is many times over greater than what I put in, but absolutely was worth doing. And I needed to pull some things together, but I had the money. I just didn't know it. And I think that, a lot of people are out there right now thinking, someday I'm going to do this. Someday I'm going to buy a duplex and live in it. But maybe you're a lot closer than you think. Reach out, talk to your lender, talk to some real estate agents in your area. Absolutely, it can happen for anybody. There is no person I have ever met that cannot house hack. So, Joe, I see a bunch of books back there behind you. Do you have a favorite business or mindset book that you like to recommend to people?
Well, I mean, I read a few books here and there. I tell you, for newbies out there, there's a book that I would really recommend you get. Mm-hmm. It will motivate you and it'll take you through all the steps you need to do. And it's a comprehensive book and it will help you understand. And the book is called Retire Early with Real Estate by Chad Carson. Oh, yeah. And it's kind of the FIRE movement, but retire early with real estate. And it really is it takes all the nuts and bolts down. I read the book just because I was curious to what it might say. Yeah. And there's nothing in that book that I disagree with. So it's right on target. So that's a book that I would recommend, especially if you're new to, you're just thinking about real estate, but you're also working hard and slugging out there, and you're we don't think about retirement. I'll be honest with you, most people don't start thinking about it till they hit about 50. When the kids are getting ready to go to college and it gets quiet around the house, then they start thinking about it. But that's too late. Oh, yeah. If you're, you're behind the power curve. If you can start thinking, how am I going to retire at age 35 or 40 or 25? You're far ahead of the game than trying to tackle that problem at 50 or 55.
Yeah, compound interest will do wonders for you if you start in your 20s. If you're thinking about retiring someday, which everybody needs to, because you can't guarantee it. Somebody else is going to do it for you. Start as early as you can, and compound interest is going to make it a feasible thing to do, and you can retire well. There's nobody, everybody's heard the story of the janitor that retires with a couple $1 million, but there's nobody that cannot plan for retirement. So, Retire Early, Retire Rich, great book, published by Bigger Pockets, written by Chad Carson. Just a number of books out there like that, but I think that's a great one to start with. So, Joe, how can people get a hold of you? Is there a best place for people to read more about you or learn about you and ask questions?
Well, there's one other website that I am crazy about. You've mentioned that just recently, biggerpockets.com. Mm-hmm. Bigger Pockets is a grassroots investors, a real estate investors website. Mm-hmm. And that website it covers any topic that's related to investment real estate, including management, landlording, problems, bed bugs. How do I get rid of them? You can come across anything you need. And there's also local forums for almost every metropolitan area out there. And it talks about all the aspects of what's going on in the community to how do I handle this problem. I like to get on there. I have a couple keywords that I have. One is duplexes and one's Austin. So anybody that writes or posts a message that mentions the word duplex or Austin, and I used to have a short-term rental, so I used to have Airbnb as one of my words. Then I would get a little link there that shows all those, and I would occasionally pop on them, and I do a lot of responding to those, just helping out people. Mm-hmm. So And you can also connect with different investors. That's a great way if you go, well, I'm in Kalamazoo, Michigan, or wherever, and I don't know of anybody. Get on Bigger Pockets and go to your local community forums, and you'll find people. And man, what better way to connect than to some investors, or even other investors or wannabe investors like you are posting on there, and get to know them as well, because a lot of times they'll experience something that you need to know about and that they just came across. So Bigger Pockets is, you can probably find me on there and connect with me, and be happy to meet with you if you'd like.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that. Great community. Any question is a good question, so make sure to ask it. Joe, last question, probably the most important question here is, what's your favorite restaurant in Austin?
Well, I tell you what, I do like Lupe's Tortilla. I like their fajitas. Lupe's Tortilla is great. I also like Rudy's. Rudy's barbecues. Whenever I have guests come in from out of state and they're not used to having barbecue so much, I take them to Rudy's, and even though it's kind of an austere environment, they love it. It's great. So the fajitas at Lupe's Tortillas, you can't beat that. and Texas barbecue is pretty good.
Oh yeah, I actually had Rudy's for lunch today, so completely agree. Great place. Joe, thank you so much for coming on here. Again, if you want to reach Joe, we will put links into the show notes here, but he's on Bigger Pockets. He's easy to find, and he has a wealth of knowledge he would love to share with you about multifamily investing in the Austin area.
All right, good to see you, and good talk with you, Jordan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Take care.